What's up, everybody? This is Rich from Gaming on the Budget, the channel that reviews free or cheap games and games on Game Pass with the hopes of recommending you some dope shit. So, really quick, if you saw my YouTube short that I dropped earlier this week, then you already know what game I'm about to get into. The game that we're going to be reviewing today is called SUNSET OVERDRIVE. So really quick, I want to give a shout out to homie Trey the Prodigy. He recommended this game a while ago. I finally got to take a look at it on Game Pass. I watched the trailer and I was like, you know what? This is definitely a game that I want to try out. But real quick, before we get started, y'all know the drill. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, drop the like on the video. It really helps y'all. Like I'm saying, I'm a man on a mission. I'm trying to get to 500 subs before the end of July and 1,000 subs before the end of the year. I would really appreciate all the love. So really quick, you know, that corny YouTube shit, like, subscribe, smash the like button, all that dumb shit. Please do it for me. Appreciate it. So anyway, done with the PSA. Now let's talk about some facts about SUNSET OVERDRIVE. So the genre of the game is a third-person shooter, action-adventure game that's also pretty much an open-world game. Developed by Insomniac Games and Blind Squirrel. Published by Xbox Game Studios, released back in October 2014, created on the Insomniac Engine version 4.0. Platforms you can currently play this on is Microsoft Windows and the Xbox Ones. And the most important question on this channel is it cross-platform compatible? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem so, which would make sense because it's only available on Windows and Xbox One. So let's go ahead and talk about the story or the lore behind the game. So the game takes place in the year 2027 in a fictional place called Sunset City. In this city, you have Fizco, which is basically like the Tesla or Apple of the world, just a big money-making corporation. One day, Fizco has a pre-release party showcasing their newest drink, Overcharged Delirium XT, or just Overcharged for short. The people of Sunset City would be the first to try it, which actually may turn out to be a bad thing. You see, Fizco was so eager to get this drink out, they skipped all the health code regulations and all that. Turns out the drink is so toxic that anyone who drinks it turns into a violently ugly as fuck looking mutant called OD, or Overcharged Drinker. Fizco, being the assholes that they are, need to cover up their tracks, so they quarantine Sunset City, not allowing anyone in or out of the city to protect their reputation. That's where you come in. Your character, being a Fizco employee in the sanitation, actually didn't drink Overcharge and is basically immune. Now it's up to you to fight your way through the OD and get all the truth out to the public and make it out alive at the same time. So after seeing the trailer for this game and seeing how you kind of skate around the city, it definitely reminded me of a few things. Basically, in my mind, this game is a mix of Jet Set Radio or Tony Hawk with Dead Rising, which actually makes a whole lot of sense because if you play those games, you'll see where the influences come from. But anyway, I'll get into that a little bit later. So I put a decent amount of time in this game, and with every review, you know, I got some shit to get off my chest. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first point, the visuals. This game actually looks pretty damn good, I can't lie. As a gamer, sometimes you play an open world game and you kind of have to compromise great gameplay for a lesser graphics, but SUNSET OVERDRIVE doesn't have that problem. You can see this all throughout the game with the character, the monsters, the OD, other enemies as well, but especially so in the environment. Sunset City, I mean, for an apocalyptic monster-filled city, is actually pretty fucking nice looking. The city is mad vibrant with great details all over. For an open world, the map is really detailed, which made me surprised actually. Although I praise the graphics, I do have one thing I want to complain about. So you get to create your character, which is pretty dope, right? However, I found that the selection of customizations was limited in my opinion for creating someone who's supposed to be black. I mean, they got the skin tone right, but that's like it. Don't get me started on the hair, bro. Like, the black hairstyles in this game, quotations, like the braids or the dreadlocks, how do I say this politely? They look like a cheap knockoff or an attempt at what the actual hair looks like. Ultimately, I picked this afro, but come on, like, you can take a look at this shit. Like, this wasn't meant for me at all. You can tell that this was like an afro that someone else would have, and not particularly someone like me would have. Anyway, I created my character as best as I could, and this is what I got. So another thing I don't like is that the voice selection is really limited as well. I mean, like, they have some voices you can choose from that are default, but like, here's my character, right? Ultimately, my guy sounds like fucking Ryan Reynolds. And don't get me wrong, I love Ryan Reynolds. Like, Deadpool is my shit, but come on, y'all. Developers really need to give more customizations to the voice. Like, at least let me like play around with the tone or something, like get a deeper voice or a raspier voice. Like, literally there was nothing. So anyway, despite not having the best customization for people of color, Sunset Overdrive is still an amazing looking game, and I have to give it that at least. So the next point, the mechanics. So let's first talk about movement in the game. So when I talked about how this game is like Jet Set Radio and Tony Hawk, it's basically regarding the movement. So I would say predominantly the best way to move in this game is by grinding on ledges and wires to get across the map. You don't need skates or anything either. You kind of just grind with your shoes, which is interesting, all over the place. You're able to boost to grind faster, and you're also able to switch directions mid-grind. To avoid obstacles, you can switch to grind below wires using this hook thing. The game also uses parkour pretty heavily. You're able to jump onto walls, you're able to wall run, and you can trampoline off of things like cars and umbrellas. You can even dash onto the water and trampoline off of boats. At some points in the game, you're able to use vehicles, but mostly you'll be doing everything else I mentioned. I should mention, walking is the slowest way to get around in this game. This will leave you vulnerable to the OD as well as other enemies. So if you don't want to die early or a lot, I would say you got to keep grinding and staying off the streets. That's probably the best thing to do, or at least just keep grinding. All right, so next point, leveling up. So the game is pretty much like, the game is very much like Tony Hawk and Jet Set Radio, where it rewards you for grinding and alternating between movements. For instance, jumping onto a wall and then grinding onto a ledge gives you a combo boost. Also, if you attack enemies while using abilities as well, you get more boost and points that way. Oh yeah, you have abilities in this game. So for instance, you can shoot fireballs after upgrading your melee attack, and all these other things you can get via amps. So amps are kind of like amplifications basically that you can add on to your weapons as well as other things in the game. So now that I mentioned weapons, let's go ahead and get into that. So naturally, when dealing with a zombie apocalyptic type of game, weapons is the first thing you think about, right? So I mean, you have to defend yourself, and Sunset gives you a bunch of ways to do that. So you have some melee attacks to start off with, like hitting OD with the lead pipe. You're also able to tackle and dodge, but I think the best thing is the weapon. So this is where I believe Sunset Overdrive gets their influence from Dead Rising. You're able to craft these really bizarre and goofy weapons, like a gun that shoots explosive teddy bears and another gun that shoots electrified vinyl records. You also start off with a revolver called a Dirty Harry, which is a reference to Clint Eastwood, if you guys have ever seen that movie, or if you guys are even old enough to see that movie. There's also traps you can get, which are used for objectives where you have to protect your base from a wave of OD. These weapons can all be upgraded using amps, like I mentioned before, amplifications. So the next mechanic is the enemies. So in the game, you have to fight your way through the OD all over the city. There's several kinds of OD to deal with. That's very similar to Left 4 Dead if you played that game. So there are regular OD, which would be compared to the normal zombies in Left 4 Dead. There's also these acid spitting ones, and then you have these big old huge OD that are similar to the tank in Left 4 Dead. There's also long range OD that shoot projectiles and shit. Other than the OD, you also have other humans you have to worry about. So there's an enemy group called the Scabs you occasionally run into. They're armed, like they got some pretty decent weapons. So, and they roll deep. So the best thing you can do is, you know, kind of be careful as far as where you end up in the city. Of course, you can take them head on, but you know, with OD and monsters on your back, you kind of want to play things strategically. Even have like physical robots that will attack you from time to time. Throughout the game, there's also boss battles that you got to deal with. So there's a lot of variations in the enemy department. So let's go ahead and talk about the game modes. So the main story mode of the game is to figure out what is going on basically, right? And trying to escape Sunset City while surviving all the threats. On the way, you have to meet people and you end up doing objectives for them. You know, these objectives reward things like new weapons or parts to create new weapons, or even parts to create a vehicle to get out of the city, things like that. This mode is solo play, but there is a multiplayer mode called Chaos Squad where you can play up with 8 people. In this mode, you and your squad team up to do certain missions like fighting a horde of OD, protecting objectives from waves of OD, and more. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to play Chaos Squad just because whenever I tried to matchmake, I wouldn't get anything. I mean, I tried several times and for several minutes I couldn't get anything. But here's some video that I found on YouTube that kind of explains it. And ultimately, it looks kind of fun, looks pretty cool, and I wish I would have had a opportunity to play this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about like some random shit, miscellaneous. One of the things I really appreciate about this game is just how goofy it is. Like, it's a game that doesn't take itself seriously, and that's like mad refreshing. I mean, the dialogue, you can definitely see this, and even in some of the mechanics, they make a bunch of pop culture references as well in the gameplay. One thing I thought was really funny was like when you die, you respawn in a different way. So for instance, one time I died and I came back like the girl from The Ring, like, you know, crawling out of the TV. And then another time I died, I literally was like in a coffin and I came out of the coffin. And so like they have all these different animations for when you die, and I think it's pretty interesting. It's pretty funny. Another thing they do is they break the fourth wall a lot, which I really think is funny. Like one time, you know, I didn't complete the mission and it said, hey, let's rewind time and pretend like that didn't happen. You know, things like that. So I love, you know, things like that when devs sneak things in. Like when the devs do things like that, it's really refreshing. Also, side note, the music's actually pretty fire too. I mean, it would kind of have to be so, right? Like because this game is influenced by Tony Hawk or Jet Set Radio, the music definitely goes around with like the skating around the city, so it only makes sense that this would be just as good. So, but I did appreciate the music that they offered throughout the game. It was cool, just jamming out the tunes and getting through the city. All right, so you guys know what time it is. Let's go ahead and talk about the highlights for the game. I really like the open world aspect of the game. Like I mentioned, the environment is really dope visually, and it's just cool to be able to interact with everything basically. Being able to move around the city in all those different ways is pretty dope. The map is huge as well, and you can literally just explore if you want and kind of do your own thing, similar to GTA. One of the other highlights for the game is the quirkiness around it. Like I just like the fact that the game doesn't take itself seriously, and it just works with the vibe of the game overall. I mean, for an open world game like this, is I don't know, there's something about it being very goofy and weird. I wouldn't say weird, but you know, different, that I can appreciate. Final thoughts? I think Sunset Overdrive is definitely an interesting kind of game. I mean, they have a different spin on the whole end of the world thing, and I mean, the influences are by some pretty classic games, I would say. Visually, it's a pretty dope game, and I just really like the open world aspect of it. The devs can definitely add more options in the customization area for people like me, but other than that, the game is pretty fun. As far as rating, I would comfortably give Sunset Overdrive like a 7.5 out of 10. It's really not a bad game at all. If you are into games that are open world, that have a little bit of looniness to them, and they're just kind of different and march to the beat of their own drum, then I would recommend Sunset Overdrive. But overall, I think Sunset Overdrive is a decent game, and I feel like if you're like an offbeat type of person, if you like offbeat games, then this might be the game for you. But anyways, as always, I want to hear what you guys think. Have you played Sunset Overdrive? Is it on your list? Do you have Game Pass? Is it one of the games you play on Game Pass? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Is there anything I missed in the game that I could have covered? Let me know. I want to hear all that in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and drop a like. And if you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. Videos on a weekly basis. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. And also, yeah, let me know what games I should play. Like, I'm always down to hear what suggestions you guys have, whether it's on Game Pass, whether it's a free game, whether it's a cheap game. Please let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to it. So again, want to shout out Trade the Prodigy for recommending this game. Not a bad game, bro. I definitely would, you know, recommend it to other people that are into these kind of games. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Again, if you guys made this far, thank you. You guys are dope. And yeah, more videos on the way. Appreciate it. All right, y'all. Peace. See you on the next one.